The Indian Navy protects us not just in times of war, but also in times of peace, from pirates, from people running guns, from smuggling, threats to our trade, threats to our security. It protects about 11,000 kilometers of our coastline and 1,300 islands, as well as many states that border the sea and the oceans. Today we are joined by a man who has served in the Indian Navy with distinction. Commodore Srikant Kesnur, a Vishisht Seva Medal, retired, is with us today, and he has commanded 2 frontline warships. He has also served as an advisor and a defense attaché in East Africa. He has been commended by the Chief of the Naval Staff for his role in electronic warfare, and he now spends his time in promoting awareness about the sea and about our rich maritime history, and to remind us that India's story has always been a story of the sea. Welcome, Commodore.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here and wonderful to be with you.
Lovely to have you here. Your experience has been so rich. I could only give a very small portion of it here. So what intrigued me, what I'd love to know about, and I'm sure our viewers also will, is tell us about the 2 frontline, you call them frontline warships, right? And one of them was the largest amphibious warship. So tell us your experience there.
Yes, I commanded 2 ships.
Yes.
One was INS Vindhyagiri. This was from 2004 to 6. And Vindhyagiri was an anti-submarine frigate, which meant it was largely to fight submarines, part of the Western Fleet. But it was also at that time customized for drone operations, drone control operations, UAV operations, and we can talk about that later. And my second command, which happened about 10 years later, was INS Jalashwa, which is India's only landing platform dock and our largest amphibious ships. Now, both of these were hugely interesting and wonderful in their own ways. In both the ships, I had wonderful experiences. On Vindhyagiri, we did, for example, the first ever operational exploitation of drones by Indian Navy. Then,
just to interrupt you, well, firstly, what do you mean by a drone?
Yeah.
Define that for us. I mean, we hear that word all the time.
Yeah.
And tell us how this first experimentation with drones happened.
Yes. Drone is basically unmanned. In fact, I'm glad you like this, because those days we used to use the more conservative phrase called unmanned aerial vehicle, or UAV, which means a aeroplane which doesn't have a person in it.
Okay.
Now, moment you don't put a person in a flying object, all the considerations for the safety of that person and risk and all that go away. So not only you can now make a platform that's much smaller, you can put payloads instead for for searching, for electronic warfare. So you can make it smaller. You can make it, in a sense, more powerful or more effective. And you also can risk it, because at the end of the day, what is the worst that will happen? You will lose an
electronic vehicle. Yeah.
But that enhances your risk-taking ability so much that more often than not you succeed.
Okay.
Because after all, the antagonist is not there everywhere.
Okay.
So the Indian Navy did this fantastic innovation. These were Israeli drones or Israeli unmanned aircraft, but they used it close coast, whereas we needed it more into the open seas.
Okay.
So what we did is, while we launched them from the coast, we had these 2 ships, INS Vindhyagiri Mine and INS Taragiri, which controlled these at sea and took them further and further away. Okay. So we were able to operate in the deep seas with drones, and the moment you bring a drone like that, the sea area you put under surveillance. The sea is very vast, your entire concept of space and time changes. So wahan pe, if you have to look for one person, it's actually a needle in a haystack sort of thing.
Okay.
So surveillance is very important, and surveillance is done by radar and electronic warfare systems and all that. So you have these systems on board these UAVs, and you get a wider area under coverage. Okay. So what happened is, these 2 ships cumulatively added much more to the fleet abilities, you can say.
Okay.
And it's thrilling to be part of some pioneering initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. In spite of being from a service family, when I was reading when I was narrating what else the Indian Navy protects us from, I myself didn't know. I only thought that, okay, we use them in times of war. I didn't realize there's pirates, there's smuggling, there's protecting our energy, protecting
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought this out, because again, with no disrespect to the Army or the Air Force, what happens is, in the seas beyond 12 nautical miles, which is about 20 kilometers, it's all international waters, which means that it is free for use by all the entities of the world.
Whether they're friendly or unfriendly.
Whether they're friendly, unfriendly, neutral. Now, finding out who is your enemy amongst this becomes a Herculean task. So in peacetime, you have to always have your intelligence, your surveillance, your sensors grid always, in. The second important thing, and that you brought out, on land, suppose someone is destroying your forest, you have the forest guards, the forest service and other people. If there's something happening on land, the police walas, the CRPF, others are there. At sea, whether it is war or defense of the nation, or what we call as constabulary, threats to, policing the seas, from smuggling, from illegal fishing, from gun running, from drugs, from proliferation, from human trafficking, from terrorism, from ecological destruction. All of this is the remit of either the Navy or the Coast Guard. Coast Guard a little closer to the home waters, and of Navy in the blue waters, so to say. So the Navy is parallelly doing both military operations and policing or constabulary operations, and that is a kind of 24/7, 365. So often we don't hear about it. But the Indian Navy and bigger navies like Indian Navy in the Indian Ocean, I mean, we call ourselves as a preferred security partner or first responder. So if there's a piracy incident, if there's a humanitarian assistance or rescue incident, वहाँ सब जगह हम लोग चले जाते हैं. We've got the ships, we've got the legs, we've got organic capabilities. A ship like Jalashwa, for example,
which you commanded as well.
Yes, that has huge abilities for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Because an amphibious ship, you can carry army personnel. Now, one army battalion plus is about 1,000 people. So this ship could carry 500 crew plus 1,000 people on its own. So when you are not, and their equipment, tanks,
so how large is it, like in terms of
it's huge. Jalashwa is cavernous. It was 17,000 tons, 170 meters. It is almost like a aircraft carrier.
Wow.
And उसमें क्या है? The ship itself has within it 4 छोटे जहाज.
Wow.
It has got 4 landing craft within, and it could carry 6 helicopters on top. So it was simultaneously a helicopter carrier and a landing platform dock. So you had this fantastic thing where mid-sea, you actually opened the hatch behind, got water, flooded your well deck as it was called, and pushed the chota landing craft out to go on to the beaches or shores of interest. So these are hugely versatile ships. You can think of LPDs as all-rounder in a cricket team, or as a smartphone with a lot of apps. So when you bring in those sort of organic strengths, you got to use them. So humanitarian assistance, coastal security, far seas maritime security, protection of your offshore, Bombay High, where a lot of your energy assets are required. So all of this is done by the Indian Navy today. And that makes for a very interesting canvas for anyone in command. I mean, when I was in command, I enjoyed it. And my ship, Jalashwa, in fact, got the award in the annual thing for being the best spirited ship. Sampada, Indian soldiers, sailors, air warriors, they're alag mitti ke bane hue yaar.
That I agree.
They are so simple, their requirements are so simple, yet they give so much to their leader and to the country. So commanding people like that is always a pleasure and a privilege.
It is. That's why I think once you've served in any of the defense forces, your family and you identify with it, whether you're there, whether you're retired, or whether you're an army kid like I am. You know, I think that would be my strongest personal association. I call myself a Fauji brat.
बिल्कुल.
And it remains like your entire
बिल्कुल
life.
बिल्कुल
Right.
it is. And you'll be surprised, as a Navy historian, I have often been approached by many Navy kids, like the Army brats, the Navy kids, or whatever they call themselves, who after many years want to get a sense of what their parents did,
Yeah.
how their dad served. They want to get a sense, there's kind of nostalgia about their lives past, and to see if they can make sense. So it's a continuous story and theme.
Correct,
You may
correct.
move out, you may excel in other professions,
Yes.
but the bond with the forge remains.
Without a doubt, without a doubt.
No.
So for the layperson who's watching this, I wanted to ask you, now we've spoken about frontline destroyers,
Yes.
aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, unmanned vehicles. So what is each one of those? Whatever you
Yes.
can talk about.
Yes,
you
yes,
know,
of
what
course,
are
of
each
course, of
those?
course. Very simple. Aircraft carrier is, you can say, she is like the centerpiece of naval fleet operations. They are very big ships, and they're big ships because they are like a floating airfield. They carry aircraft, fighter aircraft, surveillance aircraft, helicopters, and basic idea is when you go into far off waters, you have ready and available air power, because you can use, see, aeroplanes have speed.
And
They can travel vast distances, they can carry weapons.
But they need a landing
They need a landing spot. They don't have strong ability to make presence far off. So they need to be fueled, they need to land, So aircraft carrier combines the best of sea power and air power.
Okay.
So आपको जिधर around the world you can put your ship, and it is like putting this huge this huge it projects power. It is about influence. It is about in war it could be construed even as show of strength.
Okay.
So coercive pressure, all that is the big dada of battle. Okay, and it's very powerful. Now the aircraft carrier in turn always operates as a part of a carrier strike force or a carrier battle group, which has destroyers, frigates, to give multiple. It supports the destroyers. The destroyers support it in terms of 3 or 4 dimensional threat you have from air, from surface, from subsurface.
Okay.
So you need specific ships, for example, to hunt submarines.
Okay.
You need ships to hunt enemy aircraft, though aircraft carriers also have that capabilities. So they operate together as a group. So after the aircraft carriers, you have destroyers, frigates, corvettes, which are different sort of surface ships. मैं बहुत इजी तरह से बोल रहा हूँ. तो डिस्ट्रॉयर्स, फ्रिगेट्स और कॉर्वेट्स जो है यूजुअली एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर के साथ चलती है. अलग अलग थोड़े उनके लिटिल डिफरेंट डिस्क्रिप्शन इन देयर वेपन कैरिंग कैपेबिलिटीज एंड साइज. उसके अलावा सबमरीन्स और पनडुब्बी जो होते हैं, they add the third dimension to the Navy's warfare. Surface, air, submarines go beneath the water.
Yes.
And therefore they are very deadly.
Okay.
So if your aircraft carrier is a tiger, then your submarine is a cobra. It's stealthy.
Okay.
So it can come in from wherever, because when you are hidden down below water, detecting you becomes a big challenge. And that gives a certain freedom of action. So aircraft carriers and surface ships are used to control the seas, whereas submarines are typically used to deny the seas. मतलब मुझे किसी और को रोकना है, उसको मारना है, उस enemy के warship हो या उसका commercial ship हो जो बहुत सारा important stores या ammunition लेके जा रहा है या तेल लेके जा रहा है. So to hit that person and create mayhem. अगर आपको बोलता है कि जंगल में एक मैन ईटिंग टाइगर है, इवन इफ द जंगल इज वास्ट, यू विल थिंक 10 times बिफोर गोइंग देयर. तो अगर आप ये बोलो कि वहां पे सबमरीन है या उस सबमरीन के डर हो गया, तो it is very difficult. So submarine creates that fear psychosis.
Okay.
Then that apart, you have these specialist vehicles. Amphibious ships like the one I commanded are meant for Navy Army joint operations.
Okay.
You carry army troops, BMPs, tanks, trucks, their equipment, soldiers, and to take them to a far off beach, distant beach or shore. So they are for power projection, they are for influence, but वो उनका एडिशनल रोल ये है कि ह्यूमैनिटेरियन असिस्टेंस, डिजास्टर रिलीफ, फ्लीट सपोर्ट वो आता है.
Right.
उसके अलावा यू हैव स्मॉलर शिप जैसे माइन स्वीपर्स, सीवर्ड डिफेंस बोट, मिसाइल कॉर्वेट्स.
So you can have mines in the ocean as well.
Of course. And mines in the ocean are much bigger. I mean, you're asking me as an army person.
I didn't know mines in
Oh,
the ocean.
absolutely. The fundamental principle is the same. That you either in army you mine on land, here you mine in waters. And it is a cheap option against the enemy to deny them certain space.
Okay.
So you always, you try to place your warships in some place, you try and mine some other waters. So mine sweepers are needed to clear the mines, because if you know that the enemy is planted mines somewhere, you don't want your ships to be hit by mines.
Yes.
So minesweepers often are first in the line of action, and so that they are not triggered by the mines, they are built with special a special hull. So you have all these sorts of vessels. Then you have smaller ships, close coast operations के लिए missile boats हुआ, seaward defense boats हुए. Then you have patrol vessels, which have long legs. उनका equipment, weapons थोड़ा restricted होता है, but they are meant to have a little gun and one helicopter, but long staying capacity. So they stay out at sea for a couple of months or whatever, and they are constantly patrolling not just your waters but the high seas. Because like you brought out, अगर piracy हो रहा है,
smuggling,
Gulf of Aden में कहीं smuggling हो रहा है, ये हो रहा है, तो we put our ships in different corners of Indian Ocean.
Wow.
So वहाँ पे तो सब जगह, often even these patrol vessels are useful. So the Indian Navy is a very, very powerful and balanced mix of all these kind of ships.
Yes, I mean, imagine one had no idea about the extent of, different technical capabilities that these ships have.
Absolutely.
Also, I noticed one thing, which is true of all the forces, you all always kind of take casually the physical threat to yourselves. You have not spoken about it, but I'll tell the viewers, I have been inside a submarine, not while it was sailing, obviously when I was on dock, and it is hats off that you can function like that, because it's a very small space full of equipment. So it's like the inside of a tank. I found it
Absolutely.
but probably even smaller, and it's not a easy task to sail in a submarine. So what are the kind of tell us a little bit, what is it like sailing? You're underwater, there's pressure on you, obviously there's no access to any suppose there's a problem, there's no access to any doctor or anything, you are at risk also because someone can attack you. So
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought all these out. Let me tell you, I'm not a submariner. I have sailed in a submarine only वो जो familiarization sorties होते हैं उसके लिए. तो मुझे भी सबमरीनर होने के लिए स्पेशलिस्ट सबमरीन कोर्स करना पड़ता है, तभी वो सबमरीन बैच मिलती है. मीन्स दीज आर सीरियस प्रोफेशनल क्वालिफिकेशंस. So but like you, I have also visited them in harbor and sailed out a couple of times for those little sorties, to familiarize yourself. So all these points that you brought out, a submarine is so tightly packed that it will make a Bombay chawl look like a 7-star hotel. It is so tightly packed.
And the men and women are fighting from.
They're fighting. So it has, one is when you're in a conventional submarine, when you're moving from one compartment to other, those hatches are so small you actually bend and go through. You can't walk even straight when you are passing through hatches. Of course, in the compartments you can stand straight. Second, there is something called hot bunking in the submarines. That means किसी का कैप्टन को छोड़ के there is nobody else who has a dedicated bed. So जो ड्यूटी पे रहता है वो ड्यूटी करता है और जो वो नहीं होता है वो आके सो जाते हैं. So there is not even, forget about my cupboard or your cupboard or you don't even have your own little bunk, and these are like those railway, little thin. Thirdly, toilets. There is often just a single toilet amongst, 60, 70, 100 people. Not only you take turns, you're not supposed to take too long.
Because of shortage of space.
Absolutely. So what it means is you got to get your body, mind, metabolism, all of that used to it.
Yeah.
You are in continuous artificial lighting for days.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are claustrophobic, you must never join submarines because you'll feel hemmed. So it requires a different kind of a human being. I mean, amongst ourselves, we say you have to be crazy or mad to join a submarine. So I can understand what you're saying. Just as you have to be crazy to be a fighter pilot in the Indian Navy because you're taking off and landing on a moving platform.
Yeah.
You're never landing on an airfield that is stationary. So all these are amazingly, adventure is one part, and each one of them we who've served on the surface ships feel a sense of adventure. But it requires, as you brought out, a different sort of a mind and ability. So submarines is the ultimate cutting edge to be a submariner and to operate in that environment, to be away from your families. And submarines also, because of the way they operate, they're not in touch with shore. मतलब अगर आपके घर में कुछ हुआ तो आपको 2-3 महीने बाद ही पता चल जाएगा. And again, you brought out doctors. Now, of course, with nuclear submarines, is greater medical, this one. But often, there is no doctor.
Yeah.
Which means not only you have to be on physical, or there's one doctor, but, attending to emergencies and all that is difficult. So, Indian Navy actually has had this rare distinction when one of our submarines, the first INS Chakra, was coming from Soviet Union. They had an appendicitis case. And the only doctor on board was a physician. He was not a surgeon. But because the submarine was underwater, they could not reach anywhere. So you had this case of a physician actually do the appendicitis surgery and, make that sailor feel good. So often we have to attend to these sort of emergencies too. So they are remarkable people.
Yes, definitely. I think all our service people.
Absolutely.
You've also served as a defense advisor in East Africa. Before this, we had Major General Ahmad on, who I believe is known to you.
Yeah.
He spoke about his stint in Somalia. And it was so interesting getting a perspective. Now we only hear about Somalia, about Africa in the news. And unfortunately, we don't hear good news about Africa. But Africa is really important in the geopolitical scenario. So how was your stint there? Where were you based?
So I was based in Nairobi in Kenya, but my area of responsibility was East Africa. So formally I had Seychelles and Tanzania, but because my boss, the High Commissioner, also was the ambassador for Eritrea and Somalia, that came under my remit, and there were a lot of issues where the military or the Navy was involved, in Uganda, in Mozambique, in Comor, in Reunion. So often the first line of action or correspondence or speaking or all that happened when I was there. And I'm glad you brought out about Major General Ahmed, dear friend and coursemate, because Somalia, I was there I was in Nairobi from 2008 to 12, when piracy in the Gulf of Aden was at peak and there was no Somali government. So the Somali transitional federal government, or you could call it the government in exile, largely operated from Nairobi.
Oh.
And there was a great deal of piracy. So international piracy efforts were being coordinated from UN offices in Nairobi, in Kenya. So in a sense, Nairobi was like the political center relating to Somalia,
Okay.
So I was involved in a lot of issues there. So you're absolutely right. Two parts. One is we don't hear good stories about Africa, which is a stereotype that needs to be corrected because Nairobi itself is a beautiful place. Kenya is a beautiful country. Tanzania, Seychelles, all of that. But also, as you said, these are geostrategically very important. And we have historical links with them. We are connected through the seas. The people there are very nice. East African coast is a direct part of the Indian Ocean geography, so to say. Okay. So these are strategically very, very important to us, and we need to look at them this way, notwithstanding the odd, this one.
Unrest or instability.
Instability. And some of that, like you brought out, Somalia, what was happening inland, there was, even now perhaps there is a little bit. And frequently because of, ethnic conflicts, which gives rise to religious fundamentalism, जैसे Al-Shabaab हुआ, which is an offshoot, of Islamist fundamentalist organizations. फिर piracy थोड़ा बहुत वहाँ पे, that crime also, some of that used to emanate from there. In fact, 2008 to 12, when I was there, was the peak period of the piracy in that region,
Okay.
So all of these make for a very interesting, work, because I was constantly involved when any, ship which had Indian seafarers was pirated. Invariably, the first office which used to be contacted either way was our office, and we were involved a lot in trying to get them out, some negotiations. The Indian Navy was doing fantastic work countering piracy at that time, so it was very exhilarating time to be there.
So you actually had to negotiate with the pirates to get...
let's say I was one of the intermediaries who helped facilitate some of that, because some of these, you see, they are larger government efforts, but to the extent that our embassy in Nairobi played the leading role in that. And I, as a defense attaché, piracy, because it happened on waters and seas, and my ambassador gave me, my High Commissioner gave me that responsibility. So in a lot of negotiations, in a lot of dialogues, in a lot of conferences and seminars dealing with piracy, I used to be involved. I mean, a lot of my friends say I must do a book on those 3.5 years. And
yes,
my wife tells me that you must do a book on this. So yes, absolutely thrilling time. But I also believe, and it might interest you to know that while I didn't do a book on this aspect, my PhD thesis is how India and East Africa can advance their friendship by having closer defense ties. So my interest in that region continued to be there.
Africa is like the last untamed sort of continent.
Yes.
Right?
And even though it is there are even now lots of places there that you have not seen. I mean, while possibly all of them have been mapped, traveling there still gives you a certain sense of thrill and adventure because of the space, because of the people, because of the wide forest, because of the range of topographies. So I mean, if you ask me, I'd prefer to travel to Africa any day than travel to Europe, with no disrespect to Europe.
I was pleasantly surprised to hear about the Indian Navy's interaction with startups. I cover a lot of startups myself, and the Navy seems to be kind of ahead of the other two forces in this department. So tell us more about it.
Yes, and that story actually goes to more than 60 years, because one of the things that the Navy decided earliest, possibly because we were crunched for funds also, was that we decided to invest on making in India, building in India, on Atmanirbharta, or whatever you would describe it. Much before.
Yeah.
Much before the other two services, and again with no disrespect to them. So in 1960, we built our first commissioned small ship. In 1960, just 13 years. In fact, before that, we built a harbor craft, but 1960, our first commissioned ship. 1964, we built the first big ship, the survey ship, but it didn't have weapons. And in 68, we launched a program for a big warship, which was to be built on a British model that was called the Nilgiri class or the Leander class. But that was modeled on the British design with some improvements by us. 10 years later, in the 70s we started, in the early 80s, we actually started designing our own ships. Okay. The Godavari class. So progressively, the ships that India acquired came to be designed, developed, built in India.
Okay.
The situation such is that in the last 10 years, we have become a country that builds not just all its ships, but builds aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines in India. Now, this is a select group of about half a dozen countries. Just 6 countries in the world have the capabilities to build both aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. ऊपर से जो आगे हम जहाज बना रहे हैं, and these are not just big ships, they're top class, means they compare favorably with any similar ship built anywhere in the world. So we are at this point of time, Sampada, commissioning a ship almost every 30-40 days.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So over the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to add 50 ships. All of them are being built in India.
That's
and
amazing.
Then there's another 30 odd follow on which have been accepted by the government.
Right.
So all our shipbuilding is in India.
So I also saw this podcast, I think, with the chief of the
Yeah.
naval staff.
Yeah.
He said by 2047, the
Yeah.
Indian Navy is going to be completely Atmanirbhar.
Absolutely. Now,
And before the other two services.
much before. Again, like I said, no disrespect. They have their own, constraints.
What they can build.
But the fact is, today, when you talk of an aircraft or a tank in their, order of battle, they have to be brought from abroad, whereas we proudly say that our ships are, and this is because of huge amount of hard work done in by a lot of people in the system. So that takes me to your question that you asked. Now, there is no way we can build ships in India without contribution from industry.
Right.
And that has to be big public sector undertakings, it has to be medium and small industries, and it has to be very small people. So earlier our model was largely defense public sector undertakings.
Right.
Somewhere over the last 20 years, we started involving a lot of medium and small enterprises.
Okay.
So a ship like INS Vikrant, the aircraft carrier we built, has more than 100 MSMEs of India. Now imagine what it means in terms of their confidence, this one. I'll give you a very small example. We used to import our steel. There is a special steel made for warship. It's called warship grade steel. We used to import all that. It is because of Indian Navy's confidence in Indian industry that now all the steel made for our warships is built in India. The Steel Authority of India mostly, but other places too. So 36,000 tons of steel for Vikrant, for example, has been made from SAI.
That's amazing.
So the natural consequence of this was move to startups, because now you are in a technology-led driven era. Today you are talking of, small things that give you precision and that give you effect. You're talking of small drones, you're talking of quantum computing, you're talking of AI. And within this, there are so many small things. I mean, a Navy ship, you go inside, nuts, bolts, valves, wires, paints, diving sets, communication sets, switches. Now many of these, एक ज़माना था कि जैसे लोग बोलते पिन भी बाहर से ले आना पड़ता था. So over a period of time we indigenized all of that. The latest burst is that now we stay ahead of the technology curve. And the only way to do it is encourage young minds in the startups.
Okay.
So
there are innovation labs.
Absolutely. There are innovation labs, there are startup labs, and there are organization.
Okay.
So we have created, we had big organization. We had a direct Naval Design Bureau, Directorate of Design, we design ships.
Okay.
We have a Directorate of Indigenization for encouraging indigenization. We had something called VESI, which is for integration of sensors across, systems. I can explain them later. But to come back to your question, specifically for startups, the Navy has formed something called a Naval Innovation and Indigenization Organization, NIIO, which at one level clutches into IDEX and Defense Innovation Organization. But the idea is to give faster clearances, tell them what are requirements, because maritime requirements frequently are different.
Okay.
I mean, for example, a paint that you might use on a building may not work on a ship.
Right.
There are different things.
Right.
So maritime requirements are different. So we now are encouraging startups to come. And one of that is through a challenge. That challenge is basically, this is our requirement, can you deliver on that? You will be, the latest figures is that out of total 550 challenges of everyone in the Indian Armed Forces and paramilitary, everyone, 200 are being spearheaded by the Navy alone.
Okay.
More than 1/3 of these, small incubations and encouragement to startups is being done by the Navy.
Including mentoring and some amount of
Mentoring, some amount of guiding, orders, financing. Again, they have different levels. I believe 1.5 crores, 10 crores, and then 25 crores, depending on the scale, what you want to do. Do you just show a prototype? Then you lead them also to manufacturers.
Okay.
Because in some case, okay, you show this, you fund initially, encourage them to get funding from elsewhere. Most importantly, I have seen from my own limited experience, they need guidance. कि क्या चाहिए? Because many who are making it they don't understand. You see, how many of us have gone outside to the seas?
No.
Nobody's blaming each other, but we have a lot of scientists, students, technology people who have never been on the high seas. So for them to make them understand कि भाई वहाँ पे कैसा माहौल है और क्या ज़रूरत है, because things operate differently, they need guidance, they need hand holding, and the Navy, I believe, is doing that in a very brilliant way, and it's open to various startups. Any startup with an idea just needs to contact NIIO.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, using your podcast as a medium, we come with an annual seminar called Swavlamban, and that's happening end of this month, end of November. So you will come to know what the Navy wants. But any startup with an idea can just go to Swavlamban in Delhi, Manekshaw Center, and pitch themselves. And I'm sure if they have a good idea, the Navy will pick it up.
Okay, so startup founders who are interested in defense manufacturing, please listen to the Commodore. There's also, you spoke about AI.
Yeah.
Now, what is, how far do you see, how fast do you see AI progressing, and how much of a role do you see AI having in research, in manufacturing, and in the Indian Navy?
See, I'm not a AI expert. I'm more electronic warfare, radar, communications. But to the extent that I know, I believe it's going to have a humongous amount, because it is already telescoping time, So something that you said was going to happen in 5 years, now is happening in 2 years, right? And we are seeing that, forget military, we are seeing that in small civilian applications. Yeah. So obviously in war, in lots of places, I mean, you take the low-hanging fruit, for example, like logistics, for example, like stores, for example, in a whole lot of communication, for whole lot of administrative abilities, you would already see AI. AI would also probably help you in quantum computing, in enhancing. I mean, what are you planning to do in the forge all the time? In war, you have to react faster than the enemy. Yeah. That's it. It's like that Clint Eastwood movie, you shoot first, So anything that helps you shoot first, which means that reduces your, what you call your sensor shooter cycle, helps, and I believe AI would be a huge factor there. Right. That having been said, I think a lot of people are giving caution in 2 or 3 areas. that one, it cannot replace a human being completely, especially where complex decisions have to be taken. So it will filter a lot of information, it will give you information, but the decision making at the end would still have to be done by human being. The second danger that some people are posing is that since it is also a question of what AI at one level is a giant filtering information. So if you are able to put in a lot of duff information, it may be possible to use it in a way for disinformation and misinformation also. So you got to be careful about that.
Right.
That sometimes whether you're being fooled by enemies' AI efforts, your own AI devices. So I think that still needs to be answered, and probably there are experts working on that. But you can be assured one thing, I'm sure the Navy would be handling this, because at the end of the day, Navy is a very tech savvy service. Almost now everyone who is being commissioned as an engineer is a technology graduate. But right from time immemorial, we have given the greatest importance to technical education. So I'm sure the Navy would be absolutely, they would be very much seized of this issue, and they'd be working. Another thing, much more, you brought the chief. I think the chief and everyone in the Navy is now talking of integration and civil military fusion, which means much greater interaction at the top levels between academia, between industry, between cutting edge laboratories, between the IITs, between scientific institutions. So I think the amount of interaction that's happening between it always was there. Right from the earliest times, naval officers used to be deputed to all these organizations, but I believe it's now happening at a much higher level. The science, industry, Navy or military fusion and integration is happening at a much higher level now.
Nice. So the Navy is at the forefront, like always, of this technological.
I would very much think so. I would very much think so.
When I asked you how should I describe you, you spoke something really interesting. You said you call yourself an Indian Navy storyteller. So keeping that in mind, from one of your earlier podcasts, there are 2 or 3 people you mentioned who are complete achievers from the Indian Navy but lesser known.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear it from you about them.
Yeah. So yes, of course. I mean, storyteller. I love telling stories. I love telling stories about the Navy and anecdotes, and particularly because we call the Navy as a silent service. Because we operate on the high seas where people don't see what we are doing.
Yeah.
It's easy to see the Army and the Air Force, As I joke, even on Republic Day, we can't get ships up the Yamuna River. No. So Navy is a silent service. They're not seen. And therefore, many of the achievements and accomplishments also get hidden.
Yeah.
So frequently I talk about these gentlemen, mind you, they're just a small part of our larger, one could talk of so many.
Yes.
But one of them is Commodore Paulraj, who is today one of the leading scientists in the world, who is a IT titan, you can say. And he invented something called the MIMO technology, multiple input, multiple output, which is the heart of your smartphones.
Okay.
So in a way, if all of us are using smartphones today, it is courtesy of a retired Indian Navy officer called Commodore Paulraj. I mean, obviously in technology there's never one single person, but how many of us know this?
No, I don't.
And today he's a leading professor in Stanford. Couple of years down the line, if he gets Nobel Prize, everyone might talk about him. But that the India and why he himself acknowledges it, of course, a great mind, but incidentally he's an NDA graduate.
Okay.
Like so father. Yes, like your father, like me, all of us, he's an NDA graduate. For NDA to produce someone like that, so his scientific journey in many ways started after this loss of INS Kukri in 71, when the sonar of INS Kukri was more suited for the cold water conditions, because Kukri was a ship brought from Britain. So it suited the cold water conditions there. And Indian Navy's planners said that we must have a sonar that is suited for the warm waters of the Indian Ocean. So you need specific sonar designed for these conditions. And that's where Paulraj was, by then he had made a name as a scientist. So he came in, and that started his scientific journey. Ultimately, of course, he produced that and then went on to do many more spectacular things, including this. So today he's one of the most well-known scientists in the IT field. He's also, incidentally, a member of, I think, the PM's expert committee on, communication, science and technology. So he's also advising the Indian government. The other gentleman is, he's Bangalore-based Captain Mohan Ram. He was one of the designers. I mean, I talked of the Godavari class ship, the indigenous design, but he was the one who designed that, So that's again brilliant. I mean, he's an IIT product. He went abroad, topped those courses. He writes beautifully. A great person, reckoned here to speak. And he went outside and joined the industry. And he joined the TVS and was the designer of the TVS Scooty, which in a sense, TVS Scooty was what the Maruti car was to the Indian woman in late 80s and 90s. TVS Scooty was to people in, particularly women in tier 2 towns and things like that. It gave a sense of freedom and exuberance and mobility and travel. And Mohan Ram designed that. So often he jokes that I am known more as the designer of TVS Scooty than of our premier warship, So, but like that, there have been nuclear physicists, there have been other scientists, there have been heads of industry and defense organizations. So I think the Navy has
produced quite a few.
Quite a few stalwarts, and also in sports, also in other areas. But this I quote frequently, like I said, to give a sense of our content.
Yeah, I know it does. So it's been a very interesting conversation so far. And, I'd like to end by asking you about anyone who's aspiring to join the Indian Navy or any of our defense services. What would you like to say to them? What should they expect? Let me put it that way.
What they should expect is a life and career that's going to be full of experiences. We call it fun now. There will be I wouldn't call them ups and downs, but it would be a roller coaster in some way. Nobody is assuring you 35, 40 years of a totally smooth ride. But on the whole, I think a career in the armed forces is super satisfying. It is thrilling. It is adventurous. But I would like to pick up 2 or 3 things, Sampada, that are extremely important in my experience, and I think it would be for everyone. So I'm not getting into talk of money and this one and things like that. But essentially, see, I'm a very small town guy. I came from Bijapur in North Karnataka. The armed forces, I believe, are perhaps the finest institution for human resource development. They transform a human being. And, so whether it is ability to mix, have a cosmopolitan attitude, whether it is encouragement. Today if I'm doing history, if I'm doing my PhDs, if I've done my degrees, it's all Navy ka badaulat hai. So I'm very grateful to the armed forces for enabling my human resource development, and in some cases that extends to the families and everything too. So it transforms a human being. I have seen sailors who joined just for 15 years say, "Sir, kya the hum aur kaise nikle?" So I believe it is the greatest agent, at least in India, of human resource development and transformation of. Second, nowhere, you can get lots of, let's say, thrills out of being on word stage and this and that, but nowhere you get the kind of undiluted friendship, camaraderie and association that you get in the armed forces. Nowhere. No disrespect against civilians or anyone, but when you go and meet your counterparts, when you go, you see that they have no such bonding that we have. Yeah. And it's something to cherish. So that is, I think, the second most important point. The third is that I think this is one career that gives you the satisfaction. I'm not saying against anyone. Gives you the satisfaction of doing something for country, feeling good about it, in a very clean, corruption-free, good, enabling environment.
Right.
So, I mean, national service in this atmosphere is something to be grateful for. So I feel these are three very important things for me. It could be different for different people.
Right.
And then above all that is perks, good life, experiences, adventure, diplomacy, some postings here and there, all that.
No, I think that was summed up really well, and we've talked about extensive things. We spoke about experience in Africa, we spoke about industry and the Navy, we spoke about your personal experiences and your message to aspiring Indian Navy people. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time. And I hope you viewers enjoyed this podcast. I've also done another podcast with Major General S.Q. Ahmed, who was from the Indian Army, retired. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe so that I'm motivated and I keep getting you more good content. Thank you guys.